Hey, it's Ryan coming at you with my new microphone from the eastern shore of Maryland. Hope you're all doing great. We're coming with a special episode today, a return trip to the December 19 episode where we talk about Nashville. Got thinking about this episode last week when we were going over all the great things to do in Tennessee, and it reminded me of this episode, and we love Nashville, so hope you all enjoy it. Additionally, in the show notes, there are a couple links to some other shows on Tennessee. An episode we did on Chattanooga and Lookout Mountain, and an episode we did on Knoxville and the Great Smoky Mountains. So check out the show notes. You can listen to those episodes as well. And together with this Nashville episode, that's our Tennessee trilogy. So hope you enjoy it. And we'll be back next week with an episode on your first trip to New York City. Thanks, everybody. Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan.
Oh my gosh.
It's nice to have you back in studio.
It's been so long.
Now, you've been to Budapest, and then you had a quick turnaround. And where were you off to again?
I was in Los Angeles.
And how was that?
It was good. It was good fun. You know, it's like always just sunny and warm there.
Yeah, that doesn't really agree with people of our pallor.
Well, no, I mean, I got a little sunburn.
Did you?
I did, yeah.
Ryan, sun protection is what, especially when you're going out to that coast. I mean, it's all sun over there.
I'm a preacher of the gospel of the SPS, so,
and not just that, you need it for the fire protection from the wildfires.
Right,
I mean,
true.
you need it from above, from below. All sides are on fire.
I made a couple of wildfire jokes that didn't go over very well in Los Angeles.
No, they don't have a good sense of humor about that.
No, they don't.
There.
Too soon. It's always too soon over there, though.
Listen, Ryan, we can't go too far into LA. We probably should do a future LA episode. So much good food out there.
There's good food. There's good art. I mean, it's a real town.
But listen, I need you to take off your fashionable LA jeans, put on some dungarees, and maybe a Stetson hat. Maybe carry around a guitar on your back, because we are heading to Nashville today.
Music City, USA.
Well, we've had some debate on the show as to whether I do think it is Music City, USA, and I think Detroit is Motown. That's Motor Town, right? Like, does Detroit also have a music? I feel like they have a music nickname.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Detroit. But if you Google Music City, Nashville comes. It's Nashville. You know.
Okay. So we're going to Music City, USA, Nashville. I know you up in Boston, we like to think of ourselves as Music City, but it's more like classical. It's a little more like orchestral chamber music.
Right. Yeah, I don't think anyone thinks of Boston as Music City.
Well, I sing an awful lot. But
just
Ryan,
boys choirs, I think, is pretty much what Boston's known for.
But Ryan, before we get into our city guide to Nashville, I have an update on our quest for Rick Steves. Now, you remember the quest for Rick Steves is that we are trying to get an interview with Rick Steves. I'm a big Rick Steves fan. We've been trying to get him on the show for a long time, well over a year.
Yeah, this is episode, 61? So this is 61 episodes we've asked Rick Steves to come on.
And we had an episode that was a love letter to Rick Steves that was just about how much we like him and why. We followed this quest for Rick Steves, and I've got some big news.
He's coming on the show.
Well, it's a step towards him coming on the show, which is, as you recall, around this time last year, I was in touch with his PR people, and they were very kind, and they had a nice email back and forth, really demonstrated my Rick Steves chops, and they said, as it happens, he's very, very busy in 2019. But you kind young man should check back. And I'm sure they thought that was going to put an end to my pestering. But instead, I launched this quest, and I wrote back and I said, when should I get back in touch with you? Because I want this to happen. And they said, maybe the end of 2019. So Ryan, this week I packaged up, some of our best episodes, our best interviews, And I sent an email to the PR folks over at Rick Steves, and it's over and it's in their court, and we are just sitting here waiting with this seat open in studio. It's the Rick Steves seat.
The Rick Steves seat. It just says, I see it. It says Rick right on it.
That's just says Rick.
Yeah.
And
it looks unused, that seat.
And so you're probably wondering if I've heard back yet. I haven't, but I think that's just because of the holidays.
Yeah,
They're
I feel
busy around the holidays.
I feel like Thanksgiving weekend's like a great weekend to send an important email. It's like that's when people are just sitting there going like, I want to respond to some emails right now, some work emails.
I probably should have labeled it, Black Friday Rick Steves deal or something.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm hopeful. I think that 2020 is the year of our interview with Rick Steves. The quest is going well. We have been persistent. We have continually praised and updated. Remember, we talked about when he was pickpocketed in Paris this year. We talked about some of his TV specials. In fact, I believe he has a Christmas special. Probably be covering that in a future Quest for Rick Steves.
He has a Christmas special?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's a European
Does he think he's Dolly Parton
special.
Or something? Like,
hey, we have a Christmas special, all right? The
well, we have a
Spectacular. That's true. Why Rick doesn't have a podcast, I don't understand. That's exactly
well, I'm glad. Well, that's why we are the #1 rated travel podcast.
I mean, ideally, if I really had to tip my whole hand and show you what I'm really hoping is going to happen, I hope that he comes in and the chemistry is so hot.
But who says you're interviewing him?
I mean, come on. I think we've all heard your interviews. We've all heard my interviews. Obviously. No, I actually think this will be the rare double up where we both interview him. I feel like I can't keep Rick Steves to myself. I'd have to share him with you.
Yeah, I think that we'd have to do a joint interview, a tag team.
We
would tag team Rick Steves.
Well, I won't be sending him this episode, but listen,
he listens, so you don't need to send him the episode.
There are going to be frequent updates in the weeks to come as we approach the January 1, 2020, and maybe, my fingers crossed, we are going to have an interview with Rick Steves tucked into our stocking on Christmas Day, and we can reveal it on the big Christmas Spectacular episode.
That we're not setting our listeners up for disappointment with that prediction, are we?
Well, Ryan, I'll tell you what I don't think will disappoint. And I think that it's our discussion of a city you and I both enjoy greatly, Nashville. So I would suggest that right now it's time to stop the quest for Rick Steves. Not stop it totally, just for today.
No, I would argue maybe stop it totally. But.
Not for just stop it for today. Updates to come. And it's time to take off.
Flight attendants?
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right, Ryan. So sometimes we approach these city guides, these location guides, as we're going to give you 5 things that you got to do here, 7 things you got to do here. Here, I think we have more kind of categories that we want to talk to. So I'm going to suggest that we just discuss place by place, kind of the major features that you want to check out when you're in Nashville. And, I think you and I each, maybe we have some conflicting takes. Maybe we have some takes about things you can skip, things that you must see that you might not expect.
Right. And what is your Nashville experience?
I've been to Nashville.
So I've been to Nashville. Nashville is one of my family's vacations. We went on like 3 total vacations in my childhood life.
Oh, wow. So this goes deep to your southern roots, your southern Maryland roots.
Yeah, there is a somewhere in this world a tape of me singing karaoke from the Grand Ole Opry. I've got friends in low places at age 10, right before my voice broke, and I could still hit that, hit those sweet Garth notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if we can ever find
Castrato Ryan.
If we can ever find that recording, I think
we should definitely bring it on the podcast.
We've been trying to find it for years. The whole family is on the hunt. So if any listener out there knows where to find my recording of Friends in Low Places from 19, let me know.
Wow. Well, that does go deep. So how many times have you been in Nashville in total?
I think I've been to Nashville 4 times. I just recently went for the 4th time with some friends for a weekend.
So you're more the expert. I've been there for a few days. It was around a work trip, but I built in vacation days around it. And, if I had to brag, just because you're asking, I was there to meet with Al Gore. And so I went to Al Gore's house, which is right in Nashville. That's where he lives. That is not on the tourist list because he wants to be left alone. But just look for the big solar panels and you'll probably find it.
So sitting next to the private jet.
So I had a little work with Al Gore. And then, it's like you and I sometimes talk about if you're able to kind of combine a work trip with maybe being able to see some of the local sites. So I got out to the honky tonks, got out to a lot of the sites we're going to talk through today, got some great food. And, I feel pretty qualified to talk about Nashville.
Yeah, no, I think that you are. I mean, having the vice president's approval in Nashville is, when I was in Nashville, I didn't meet with Garth Brooks. I tried, but they told me that it was like it's like you and Rick Steves.
Even with that even with that soprano Friends in Low Places,
he would have loved that. He would have loved that.
Now, of course, Nashville is the state capital of Tennessee.
Yes.
Yeah. I could see in your face that you weren't sure that was totally right.
I know that's totally right. Yeah.
And so maybe we should start with one of these off the beaten path destinations you might not expect, which is you can visit the state capital of Tennessee. I like checking out state capitals when I'm in a state capital.
The buildings, the government buildings in Nashville are especially gorgeous. Whatever period that they designed them all, they have that very old school like DC Greek kind of feel.
Yeah, that's right. It's sort of a classic Greek architecture. It's very imposing looking. Yeah. It's up on a little hill, and the construction of it began in 1845, and it took 14 years. And was largely built, as I'm sure you could guess, by convicts and slaves.
Really?
Yeah. So that's one of those pieces of history that you want to consider when you're looking at a beautiful building. That there are blood on those stones. And Ryan, unlike a lot of state capitals, I would say this isn't a state capital that you absolutely have to get inside to see what there is to see. But hidden away on the grounds of the Capitol building is a presidential tomb. So that I think you got to search that out, especially if it's a nice day, which is U.S. President James K. Polk is buried right there. Got a nice little pavilion there that you can visit. And it's because he was governor of Tennessee.
He was?
Yeah, before he was president.
Right. That makes sense. So he's buried on the grounds at the state capitol. And there's blood on those stones.
What's kind of weird about it, though, was that he was originally buried at his Nashville mansion called Polk Place, as was his wife. And then they disinterred him and moved him.
She called it Polk Place too, right?
Yeah. They were buried there, and then the Tennessee, the state, disinterred them in 1893, and then plunked them down in the Capitol. So I guess they wanted to the Capitol wanted to claim their presidents, keep them close at hand, not keep them out at Polk Place. Though I think Polk Place, good name for like a food court.
Yeah, good name for a food court or a bordello.
And Polk, I mean, he's one of these presidents. I feel like maybe not the best reputation, but he's right in that meaty middle. When you look at rankings of presidents, he's usually like somewhere in the 20s.
Yeah, I know less about Polk than most presidents. Like I've never read a Polk biography.
No, I haven't read a Polk biography either. But
that would be a really interesting podcast episode where you and I read a Polk biography and then talk about it from a travel perspective.
Well, the primary thing I know about Polk is that he was the kind of reason that we went to war with Mexico. He really like kind of arranged the pieces on the chessboard to get America to declare war in the Mexican-American War. So any president who starts a war, that's puts you lower on my list, particularly because he really wanted in that war. He wasn't just doing something that he absolutely had to do.
And you know what? Future president railed against that war during his one term in Congress. Abraham Lincoln.
Who's that? Oh, God. Lincoln, just always delivering.
Always on the right side, yeah.
But from the Capitol, once you've taken in Polk, I think that it might be a good time to go maybe even further back in history and see another great... I mean, we said that, that it's got this kind of Greek feeling about it, the Capitol building. Well, if you really want to double down on the Greek feel, you've got to check out the Parthenon in Nashville.
Now, how did a Parthenon get built in Nashville? Right? That's the obvious question.
Yeah,
here.
well, it's
Why?
Not just a Parthenon, okay? This is a full-scale reconstruction.
Well, it's not the Parthenon. I mean,
no, they didn't. Well, hey,
when
listen,
people say, "Have you been to the Parthenon?" They're almost never referring to the Parthenon in Nashville.
Well,
unless you're in Knoxville. Maybe.
Hey, have you ever been to Athens? And you go, yeah, I've been to Nashville because it's called the Athens of the South. Well,
Athens, Georgia. Yeah.
That's true, though. It is called the Athens of the South. But I never thought of that. There's in Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, listen, you joked about, is this the real Parthenon? I mean, hey, there's crazier things. I mean, think of the cloisters in New York, right? They just took down cloisters brick by brick and moved them over from Europe into New York City. So this could be the real Parthenon, but it's not. It's not the real Parthenon. No. This is a full-scale reconstruction of the Parthenon, and not like the ruins of the Parthenon. It gives you a sense of what the Parthenon would have looked like in its full glory, but just, in the American South.
And why is it there? Like, what? There must be some kind of origin story.
Yeah. So you know how there used to be like World's Fairs, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So I love a good World's Fair.
You haven't been to a World's Fair.
No,
but they stopped being like big things in the 60s.
I know, but I love the idea of the World's Fair.
I do too. I would love for that to come back.
We're moving more apart than together as a globe. But
joking aside, I think there's something very beautiful about the idea. I feel like Disney World, Epcot's kind of like the ever-going World Fair, I think. Anyway, we've got in that sort of vein of world fairness, there was going to be for Tennessee's centennial a big exhibition, and it was planned for 1896. It got delayed till 1897, but the city wanted to have a big hoopla celebrating Tennessee, state pride, and They put together just this huge, an enormous affair. And so there were exhibition halls on, all the great sort of progress being made on transportation and agricultural and minerals and forestry. And there were even they built like example foreign villages. So there was like a Chinese village and a Cuban village and an Egyptian village. And one of the kind of like most grand of the investments built was this Parthenon recreation. And so it's been around since 1897, but it was never meant to be like a permanent structure. It was made out of just like plaster.
This is the exact same story of the Eiffel Tower, right? It was not meant to, it was built for the World's Fair, was not meant to be a permanent structure.
I mean, sure, but the Eiffel Tower was made of like, metal.
Wait, so it's still made of plaster? It's just like, this is not a recreation of the Parthenon. This is like a child's project.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's made to look like,
it's the American, stone. It's the American version,
No, it was made of wood and plaster, and it really started to fall apart, but was still standing in the 1920s. And then the city came together and they said, you know what? We like this Parthenon so much. It's so popular among Nashvillians that we're gonna make it permanent. So they invested in the construction of it, and they made it permanent, and you can visit it today. And on the bottom floor is like a rotating art gallery, and they have an exhibit about that centennial, and they've got some great photography of like kind of the Parthenon over the years. And upstairs, they have what is probably the most interesting thing that you can visit at the Parthenon, which is a 42-foot tall Athena statue. So, this is a statue that they think would be like the sort of statue that you would have seen in the Parthenon in Greece.
Yeah, it is still a pretty strange. I mean, how did they make the connection to build this in the first? Like, why the Parthenon?
So, Ryan, it goes back to that. Tennessee was trying to claim this Athens of the South title.
Right.
And so that was the inspiration.
So they have this massive Athena.
Well, it was,
a little on the nose.
The Parthenon is in Athens. They were trying to claim Athens of the South. So they said, well, that's Athens, and they have a Parthenon. So maybe if we get a Parthenon and we build an Athena, everybody's going to start calling us the Athens of the South, like we're calling ourselves that.
Yeah. It's really hard to understand the obsession of early Americans with the Greeks and with Athens, with that whole idea.
So if you go and you look at this Athena statue, what's really interesting is that I think you rarely get a sense when you look at kind of Greek statues in museums that they were this kind of vibrant living being. But she is golden, and she's holding a little Nike figure in her hand. She's got a big wreath of victory. And there's all these other gods and creatures kind of spread around the place. There's Zeus, Apollo, Poseidon. I mean, kind of all the greats. And so it really, I do feel like there, in a certain way, it can transport you back. And as it happens, one story that I read said that some pagan visitors will still come and like leave offerings at the feet of this statue. And Ryan, not only is there the kind of Athena statue inside, but as you enter and exit, You know how these great monuments in the Greek world had like the pediments, the structure just below the roof where they just filled it with statuary.
Right. Yeah.
And we're used to seeing it like broken down. So I think of the Elgin marbles in the British Museum, but here they are fully restored. So this looks like Greeks would have actually seen it when they were entering the Parthenon, not broken down, but well kept up, vibrant, telling stories, and complete. So I think this Parthenon is well worth a visit.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of it's a little interesting to me that the government of Tennessee basically pays for a pagan memorial that people go and leave stuff at.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
I mean, I would say that if you've got a long weekend, you should pair these. You should go to Nashville. You should look at the statuary at the Parthenon, then hop on a plane. Go to London, go to the British Museum, look at the Elgin marbles. Those are the ruins of the ones that you've just seen complete. And you can say which you find more impressive.
And you don't have to go to Greece for either of these activities.
And you don't have to go to Greece for either because the Brits refuse to give them back. All right, Ryan. And, so you've gone and checked out the Capitol. You've paid your respects to Polk. You're heading to the Parthenon. You've got your fill of sort of Greek philosophy and culture. Now you're hungry, right? You got to get the quintessential Nashville dish.
Hot chicken.
Hot chicken, exactly. Yeah. So, did you get a chance to try hot chicken while you were in town?
Yeah, actually, I think this was my first time having Nashville hot chicken, and I had hot chicken and mac and cheese, so it was a very diet friendly.
Yeah, I guess L.A. would not have been a place I'd immediately go after having that because then people are very fit out there.
Yeah, well, I didn't have it every single meal, but it was.
I don't know. I'm looking at you. I think I see maybe a little.
So I didn't
little hot chicken in your neck there.
I didn't think it was. Oh, God, that's true. I didn't think that it was especially hot. My dining companion is from Denmark, and so is not used to flavors or spice. And so he thought it was very hot.
Well, I'm curious to know. Let's back up a second and give kind of a description of what hot chicken is. So, hot chicken is a chicken dish where they prepare a chicken and they put on a spice rub that goes from kind of medium hot to insanely blow your head off. Your tongue is going to burn for days hot.
Like Szechuan hot.
Exactly, Szechuan hot. That's a good example, except not a Szechuan pepper. You're not going to get that tingle. The core ingredient is a bunch of cayenne, but then each of the hot chicken places around Nashville have their own specialty mix, which many of them keep secret.
Sure, yeah, that would make sense. So you've got these family hot chicken recipes,
and it's highly recommended that if you're going for the first time for hot chicken, that you want to start out at the lower end of the scale. Like, don't be kind of I'm a guy who loves spicy. I'm going to go all the way to the top hot, triple hot. Burn my face off hotness. Because truthfully, they do get like dangerously crazy hot. Now, it's interesting to me, Ryan. Yours you didn't feel was that dangerously crazy hot. Do you remember what level of spiciness you ordered?
There were two levels of spiciness. They had a hot chicken and then they had an extra hot chicken. And I went with the extra hot.
You went extra hot and it wasn't hot?
It wasn't hot. I mean, I'm also like I eat a lot of like spicy food, when in Mexico. And so I'm super used to spice. So I didn't think it was all that hot. But it might have been more of a touristy place. So I'm sure that there were more like legit hot chicken that go, actually dangerously hot.
Yeah, and that is a good watch out for the fact that you don't want to be taken in because hot chicken has become a staple of Nashville. You should do a little research as to which hot chicken place you're going to go to, and I've got one that I would recommend above all others, and this is kind of the home of the original hot chicken. It's called Prince's, and Prince's has a couple outlets. They did suffer a fire in their original a few years ago, and one thing that I'll include in the show notes is a great article by the New Yorker profiling the Prince family. But the story of hot chicken actually begins with this family, and it shows you how hot their hot chicken is because it was originally conceived as a punishment. So Prince's hot chicken has been in this Prince family for almost 100 years, and it's owned by a woman named Andre Prince Jeffries, who's the great niece of a man named Thornton Prince. And as the legend goes, Thornton Prince, this great uncle of the current purveyor, had a bit of problem straying, a bit of a wandering eye from his family.
Right.
And the saying goes that the story goes that on a particular Saturday night, Thornton went out on his wild ways, and on Sunday his wife delivered him his regular chicken dinner, but decided to amp up the spice in it and wanted him to be, he wanted to see the sweat pouring out of him, the snot pouring down, wanted him chasing down white bread and water. I mean, just a crazy hot, to suffer for those wrongs that he was doing. And instead, unfortunately, he really liked it and opened up the Hot Chicken Shack using this recipe. And it is now still to this day the gold standard of hot chicken in Nashville.
And that probably brought him even more women who are interested. The success,
because spicy food.
Yeah,
that's a fair point. I don't think that the science backed that up at the time, Ryan.
No.
So I would recommend go to Prince's. You will not encounter Ryan's problem of a not spicy enough chicken. This is the famous hot chicken, and there are no frills about it. You order it. There are paper towels in the booths, and it's served with white bread so that you can mop off your brow and take a bite of it to try to get the burning to stop. But hot chicken, you can't go to Nashville without eating hot chicken.
Do you remember what level of hot you tried?
I went for medium. Because I had read so many warnings. And by the way, I like really spicy food. And even the medium had me sweating. Also, it's really hot down there, So if you have hot chicken and it's really hot, I was afraid, I was driving around. I was afraid I'd get too dehydrated. And Ryan, I know, listen, we're in Nashville, as you say, Music City, USA. We've got to talk about music, but if you will indulge me, if I could just keep, I've taken us through so many cultural touchstones. We're now fed up on chicken. I'd like to recommend just one more non-music related attraction before we dive deep into the music culture of Nashville.
Where are you going to take us, Kieran?
I would like to recommend Andrew Jackson's home called the Hermitage, which is still in Nashville, Tennessee. It's kind of on the outskirts of Tennessee. It's like 10 miles from downtown.
And am I correct in assuming this is a complete replica of the St. Petersburg Hermitage?
Yeah. I mean, Andrew Jackson, a very cultured young man, passionate about Russian culture.
Yeah.
No, this is not based on the Hermitage Museum. It's this is the house that Jackson basically retired to after the presidency. And I will say this has not made our kind of top historic homes edition. But if you're in Nashville, this is a great place to spend an afternoon. I will say it doesn't exactly cross my threshold of passing the test where I say if you were dropped blindfold here, if you were dropped blindfolded into the house and I took the blindfold off, could you tell me whose house it was? I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a yes, but it is a.
You would just need to have a lot of dead Native Americans. You'd be like, wait a minute, is this Andrew Jackson's house? Wait a minute.
That is dark.
Does it cover does it cover how terrible a person Andrew Jackson was?
Well, again, this is one of the reasons that I sort of recommend it with a caveat, which is I actually don't feel that this house does a great job of covering the complicated and sometimes dark history of Andrew Jackson. It is a beautiful home. It's in the Greek Revival style, so it's got the big columns. It's like you've been describing, this sort of Southern trend of looking kind of classical and imposing. And so the house itself is something beautiful to behold. And, you get kind of the typical historic house, period furniture. They've got this wallpaper that they're really proud of because it's really beautifully painted and printed. But unlike, say, Monticello, they don't do a great job of reckoning with the many wrongs that the president has done. So you've pointed out one, the history of sort of Native American treatment by Andrew Jackson. The other is that, at one point they estimate that there were 125 to 150 slaves that lived right behind this house, kind of in cabins. And they do have a sort of that area that you can still visit. You can see the foundations of some of the cabins. They've done some rich excavations to try to reconstruct life at the Hermitage. But I will say that I thought that there could be a much more explicit reckoning. Much like at Monticello, you can take specific tours at Monticello where, if you want to hear about Sally Hemings and the history of the Hemings there, or the life of slaves there, that it's really like an open book and a reckoning with history. To me, I would like to see the Hermitage. I would encourage the Hermitage to bring more of that self-reflection there.
One of the things you see when you're in Nashville, when you're just walking around, is Andrew Jackson propaganda everywhere.
Yes.
And I like to spend like an afternoon just kind of walking around a city, and I'm walking around downtown, and there are all these plaques like, here's where Andrew Jackson's law practice was.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he is. It doesn't surprise me that they're not able to look at him in any kind of objective way.
No, and just like if you're visiting Polk at the state capitol, you'd see a statue of Andrew Jackson right there. As you say, he is sort of a proud figure there. I think you can tell from our tones that we think that there's a much more complicated history. And I'll tell you one way that I think when you visit the Hermitage, you can sort of pay tribute to that history, which is Andrew Jackson and his wife are buried on the property, and you can visit the grave. And directly next to them in the same area is the grave of Andrew Jackson's preferred slave, whose name is Alfred. And I think that this is a place where you can go and contemplate the dark history and what Alfred must have seen and suffered, being denied his freedom. So it's a place where you can actually get the name of an individual and think about all the individuals whose stories aren't told.
Do you know who Donald Trump's favorite president is? Andrew Jackson.
It's Andrew Jackson. Yeah,
it's Andrew Jackson.
Yeah, he's very proud of that. He takes pictures with.
Yeah, he thinks that he sees Andrew Jackson, and the populism of Andrew Jackson. By the way, that's before Hamilton, folks. There was a musical called Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson that was basically Hamilton but about Andrew Jackson. Some good tunes in there. Populism, yeah.
They actually do a pretty good job of reckoning with the dark history.
It's far more brutal to Jackson than Hamilton is to Hamilton, right? I mean, it's not like a love letter to Jackson.
No, exactly right. And Ryan, one thing to check out inside the house is this fireplace mantelpiece. As I say, like the rooms can be a little bit kind of generic at the time. You might not know whose house it is, but this mantelpiece is called the 8th of January, and it was carved by a veteran of the Battle of New Orleans, which, of course, was famously led by Andrew Jackson. And the story goes that he worked on this mantelpiece on each anniversary of the battle, January 8th, until he had finished it. And then it was sort of installed, and it was the permanent fireplace for Andrew Jackson. So yeah, that is the one piece that I think is very evocative. If you can picture the former president, the former commander, looking at this mantelpiece. Before the internet, you needed mantelpieces to remind you of your memories. You didn't have Instagram.
Yeah, no, that is most definitely true.
I guess the sort of headline that I want to give you is you should visit this national park site. That's right, it's a national park site. Got to plug that. And, as with so many of the great historical sites, you can have sort of contemplation about the difficult history that Americans inherit. But I do think after you visit the Hermitage, it's okay to head back into Nashville. And now, Ryan, I would suggest that we tackle sort of the number one thing people think of with Nashville, which is tunes. Let's talk about music.
Music. Are you a country fan?
No, you have much. I enjoy a country song, but I do feel like I grew up with kind of the pop country trend, and my family did really like country, but that particular strain of country didn't appeal to me. But when you go further back to sort of the Johnny Cash or the Dolly Parton kind of heyday, Grand Ole Opry, that kind of country, yes, I like that kind of country music.
So you like old school country?
Yeah, I like old school country, exactly. And I like the kind of rockabilly, honky tonk music that you can find so easily today in Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville. I mean, it's hard to even if you haven't been to Nashville and you haven't walked down the street Broadway or Lower Broadway, and just seen the incredible amount of live music available. It's really stunning. I mean, there's like 40 places in a row that just have live music from morning until 2 a.m. I was walking around Lower Broadway at like 10 a.m. on a Saturday, and there were already like 15 music venues just going full. You know, like you get that 10 a.m. on the Saturday slot. You know, and it's not not prime necessarily.
And you're calling out Broadway, and Broadway is sort of the known as like that main that main street that where kind of all those honky tonks and bars are. So it's popular day and night, days with like family and tourists, and at night folks who are going out drinking just looking for live music.
Yeah, exactly. So the area we're talking about is Lower Broadway, and there are a lot of places there. But one of my favorite spots that I've been to now a few times is called Robert's Western World. And this is like
this like Westworld, that HBO show?
No. It's like the first season when it was good.
Oh my God, that second season just brutal.
Oof. But Robert's Western World, Robert's Western World has been on the Strip for like 30 or 40 years, and it just plays classic honky tonk music. Sort of bluegrass, old school country, a lot of great hits from Hank Williams Sr. This sort of genre of country music, and it's a really fun crowd. It's a more authentic, I think, venue than a lot of the kind of newer places that have popped up there. So I would recommend Robert's Western World to hear some tunes. We went there and we stayed for 4 hours and just had an amazing time, just dancing all night.
It's funny too, because I feel like that name sounds like it would be a tourist trap.
Yeah. No, we kind of asked around some of our Nashville music friends and got this is a place that people like to really go and listen to music. Also, in that same sort of stretch is a place called the Ryman Auditorium.
And
the Ryman Auditorium is famous for being the original home of the Grand Ole Opry, the radio show that begins in like 1943. So in 1943, before the Grand Ole Opry had its own theater, which we're going to talk about in a bit, they were at the Ryman Auditorium and played there for 30 years. And the Ryman Auditorium fell into disrepair for years and years, but has since been remodeled and is now home to some really fantastic ticketed shows. So people come through and play many nights at the Ryman. Jason Isbell, one of my favorite all country guys, always playing at the Ryman. So you can get a tour. They do tours there. It's a very cool place to see the original Opry, obviously, but if you can go see a live show there, I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, and the Opry was there for 31 years, so we're not talking about a short bit of stay.
No. Yeah, it was there for 31 years before they moved to the new theater.
And I did not get a chance to go to the new theater. You went to the Grand Ole Opry proper today, right?
Yeah, so I've been to shows at the Ryman and at the Opry proper. One of the cool things they did is there's the famous circle. That actually people stood in on the Ryman to actually play at the Opry. Like, you stood in this famous circle where the light hit. And so when they moved the Opry from the Ryman to the new facility in the 70s, they actually cut the stage, that actual circle from the original Opry, and put that on the stage in the new Opry. So the circle is unbroken, right? It's the history from 1943 to today. You're still standing on that same piece of stage.
And, for folks who are less familiar with the Opry, it's a radio show, and it's basically it's been the home of country music and kind of the introduction of a lot of famous names. And as you say, like, it was extremely competitive to kind of get on. And since 1974, it's been at the place that you can visit today as the Grand Ole Opry. And they have 3 performances a week, which is on Friday and Saturday, and then often on Tuesday nights. And so you can get tickets. You should definitely check it out. And if you have time beforehand, you should check out the Grand Ole Opry Museum, which gives you the full history of kind of the connection with the radio show. And in fact, they still broadcast those live performances in the Nashville area today. So even if you can't get in, turn on the radio in your rental car.
Yeah, the Opry's a great time. I was in Nashville for a wedding a couple of years ago, and was there with a friend who is not a country music fan, but I drug him along to the Opry, and we had a great time. So you don't even have to love country music to really enjoy the experience.
No, and Ryan, I think we would be, we've tackled what I think are sort of the true historical roots of country music in Nashville. Now I think we should probably talk about the kind of big commercial home of country music in Nashville, which is the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Yeah. So you and I are going to say bad things about the Country Music
We
Hall
are
of
going to
Fame.
say bad.
And-
Yeah, a little bit of a preview.
Yeah,
We've
but
both,
this also applies to, in my mind, these other music, like the Cash Museum. These are all tourist traps. I mean, they're both expensive and bad.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Dangerous combination of things, right? You pay $20 to basically see some blown up photography of Johnny Cash with some Johnny Cash playing in the background.
Let's be fair. You can also see some outfits. I mean, there's a huge emphasis on the clothing that these musicians performed in there. And, I got to say, what I was hoping for when I went, and I do feel like, to a certain extent, if you're in Nashville, you kind of feel pressure that you got to check it out because it is the Hall of Fame. But I was hoping for a history of country music. I wanted to learn about sort of the bluegrass connection, the connection to African American music, going back. You
want a Smithsonian museum dedicated.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
I wanted,
not that right.
I wanted like a history of the banjo, a uniquely American instrument that they can actually trace its heritage back to instruments from Africa. I mean, I was looking for a rich appreciation of the long history of country music and how we got to sort of the pop version that's today. It is so not that.
It is so not that. No, it is more like a Planet Hollywood that you have to pay to go to.
Yeah,
Right.
and so they give a bit of a head nod to the sort of like Scotch Irish heritage that it takes.
Finally, the Scotch Irish are getting something.
but then very quickly they go to like, here's Johnny Cash's guitar.
Yeah, I mean, I think instead of any of these museums, the Country Music Hall of Fame and these other museums named after individual performers like the Cash Museum, if you just go see more live music, that'll be a much more enriching experience if you want to kind of feel like you're part of the country music scene in Nashville. One thing I'll say that's really funny, Kiernan, is when I went to Nashville when I was a 10-year-old, the Grand Ole Opry had a really big idea that they were going to build this massive amusement park called Opryland that was going to be sort of the country music Walt Disney. And it didn't exist for that many years, but I got to go to it. And, it was sort of the country music Walt Disney. It's just hard to sort of build country into like, theme park rides and stuff, unless you're Dolly Parton, Dollywood.
I was just about to say, I think it already exists and it's called Dollywood.
Yeah. And because Dolly did it for real, right? She's authentic and, it wasn't just some kind of corporate, let's just have more things for country music tourists to do, which is what they were trying to do with Opryland. We're going to do a whole episode on Dolly. And,
if I'm not mistaken, you're planning a trip down to Dollywood.
I am.
Sorry, Dollywood, not Dollyland. Dollywood.
No, Dollyland's in Los Angeles.
Is that true? What's that?
No, that's not true. It's a joke.
Okay. When are you heading to Dollywood?
In the spring when it warms up, I think it's going to be a lovely trip to the Smoky Mountains and to Dollywood.
So, if you're looking for live music, I think one other place that we could recommend is if you can't get in the Grand Ole Opry or if you have several nights, you should definitely try to hit there. But there's one venue that has live music every night, and it's a much smaller venue, and it's called the Bluebird Cafe. And I have heard that it's gotten harder to get into now because of the popularity of that TV show Nashville, which actually referenced this space by name. And so the lines have gotten longer. But they open up at 6:30 every night. There's live music throughout the night, and it's a much more kind of intimate setting to see up and coming stars. It's like the venue that young people try to get into for their big break. So the Bluebird Cafe is a place you could check out if you're looking for that.
Sounds great. I will add that to my list next time I'm in Nashville.
And Ryan, there's one more spot that I want to recommend that is off the music track. It's back kind of on the historical significance of Nashville. And that is at the Nashville Public Library, there's something called the Civil Rights Room. And it's a super evocative exhibit about the history of civil rights in Nashville and the surrounding areas. And it's interesting because Nashville was actually the first southern city to desegregate public services.
Yeah, and when you walk around downtown Nashville, you see a lot of plaques and monuments to the folks who did that. Really early sit-ins in Nashville.
Yep, and it tackles the sit-ins straight on. And in fact, in the room, there's a large circular table in the center. and that is meant as a symbolic of the lunch counters at which brave young men and women and old men and women sat to protest segregation. And so they make really great use of kind of big photography of a short documentary film and video. And so you just get a great sense of what history this city has seen and was on the leading edge of for a time. There is even a glass inscription of a quote from Martin Luther King in the Civil Rights Room that maybe we can end on, which he said, I came to Nashville not to bring inspiration, but to gain inspiration from the great movement that has taken place in this community. So great history there. Maybe there's not the full blown out museum on this, but head to the National Public Library. I kind of love that it's in the public library because it's easy, it's accessible, and it speaks to the fact that they desegregated their public services and we're leading the way there.
And if you want to eat at a restaurant and be a part of that history, you can actually eat at the Woolworths that the famous sit-ins had in the 60s. It's now a restaurant called Woolworth on Fifth, which celebrates this the 1960s lunch counter sit-ins.
Fantastic. So if you were to do all of this, you're getting great food, you're getting a long ago presidential history, you're getting more modern history that still has impacts on today, and you're getting great music. I mean, to me, this is a great trip to Nashville.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty full trip. So I think it's time for the last stop.
Last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan, we're here in the last stop. This is the last segment of the show, the final segment of the show. It's your favorite segment. It's my favorite segment. It's popularly known as the People segment. And it's where we take a second. Actually, it's usually closer to 5 or 10 minutes, but we take 5 or 10 minutes to recount something that we've done or seen or traveled to, something maybe we ate or we cooked, anything qualifies as long as it's one thing. I don't want multiple things. This is the last stop, not last stops. And the stop has to have fed the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workday week. So, Ryan, you've been traveling quite a lot. I have to think that you must have a humdinger of a last stop.
So I'm super excited because when I was in Los Angeles last week, I finally got to do the Lab Rat escape room from Tommy Wallach that we had on the show.
He talked about that in the interview. It's the escape room where the concept is that you could play it infinitely as many times as possible, and you can it changes. Is that wrong?
No, it's wrong. Yeah. No, Kieran, that's his new upcoming escape room called The Ladder, which opens in April.
I thought you were doing The Ladder.
No, I did. I did the.
You didn't do The Ladder. You did the former.
I did the. Wow.
You did the one he talks about where there's like you're in the place of a lab rat, and in the ceiling you can see the people peering down on you, the scientists.
Exactly. So I've done a lot of escape rooms in my day, and I have to say, Lab Rat is really innovative and fun and different. Like usually the plots of escape rooms are kind of like you need to escape from a room, and there's something bad.
Oh, is that what an escape? I can see. Oh, that's where the name comes from.
Right, but I just mean it's not much of a plot. It's thinly veiled. So, yeah. But there is actually kind of a story here. There's a lot of like really interesting literal bells and whistles. And it's just
literal bells and whistles.
I mean, there are bells and there are whistles. Sure.
Right. Okay. That's a literal bell and whistle.
But it is a really good time. And then after that, what I got to do, which unfortunately is not available to the public, is I got to tour the ladder room that is under construction right now on the second floor of the building. And this is going to be a very large, immersive, basically an immersive experience that doubles as an escape room and has a plot where you enter different rooms based on decisions that you make and based on various tasks that you complete. You select an avatar that follows you. It's really it's going to be a really kind of interesting, innovative thing to be in Los Angeles. And each of the rooms is patterned after a different decade. So I don't want to give too much away, but the 50s room is in black and white. The 60s room, you feel like you're in an episode of Mad Men. So it's really going to be, I think, visually and aesthetically like a really fun experience as well. And that's going to open in April. So I'm going to definitely report back because I can't wait to go check that out. So yes, so my LA takeaway was had a great time at Labarat and looking forward to seeing getting to play the ladder now that I previewed it.
And when does the ladder open again?
It opens on 4/20.
Okay. All right. So that's and you felt like it lived up to the promise. I remember Tommy particularly talking about how it's a new type of medium to tell stories, that there's like a narrative that flows through it.
Yeah, I mean, I got to see how the narrative's going to play out. He showed me a lot of the video that is going to accompany the story. Basically they shot like an indie film. It's a lot of sort of video game quality. Like you get to select your avatar at the beginning of the room. It's going to be an interesting experience, and I think it will definitely live up to the hype. Do you have a last stop this week, Kieran?
I do have a last stop, Ryan, and it's a bit of a political last stop as well, which is it's a story. I mean, we were just talking about Andrew Jackson's house. This is a story of Ronald Reagan's childhood home. I don't know. Did you happen to catch the news on this week?
I did not. No.
Okay, so Ronald Reagan. Well, Ronald Reagan, of course, is famous for trying to dial back the government, right? That the government's not the solution; it's the problem, et cetera, et cetera. And in Dixon, Illinois, there is a small house that is his childhood home. It's been open to the public since 1984, and it's run by this small nonprofit. And for as many years, it has been rejecting the National Park Service trying to take control of it, because the National Park Service, they control lots of places. They control Bill Clinton's boyhood home, the JFK birthplace here right outside Boston.
Right.
And they when you give your property to this government agency, you can feel that it's going to be protected into perpetuity. I mean, as long as the government holds up, as long as it's funded. I mean, God knows under Donald Trump, but
I have a feeling Donald Trump would protect Ronald Reagan's house.
Well, let me tell you,
if anything.
In 2002, there was a congressman from Dixon, Illinois, who passed a bill that authorized the National Park Service to buy the house. And the nonprofit said, thanks, but no thanks. We're good. We don't want the government to get involved here. We're living true to Reagan's sort of principles. And I bet you can guess the end of the story.
They went out of business.
They are massively struggling. And now they are hoping that the federal government will come to the rescue and take over the property through the National Park Service.
God, leave it to Ronald Reagan, always relying on a handout. You know, that guy? Just hand out to the government, give me that money, pay for my housing. What a guy.
Well, Ryan, the jury is still out. The National Park Service has said once the due diligence process is completed, the National Park Service would likely begin the process of developing a land acquisition budget request through Congress. So it's not a sure thing. The Ronald Reagan boyhood home, National Historic Site, it remains to be seen whether this will be protected. So I guess we can only hope that the government comes through.
We can only hope the government steps in and spends their hard-earned tax dollars to save Ronald Reagan's childhood home. Just how he would have wanted. Do you think the government funds Ayn Rand's childhood home? That would be my favorite
I think the National Park Service should start an ironic unit. All right, Ryan. Well, what are we talking about next week?
Well, you and I both enjoy carrying around books occasionally.
Well, I enjoy reading books. I know that you enjoy carrying around books, usually with no bag over it, so that everyone can go, oh, wow, are you reading that?
Well, I do read quite a bit. Thank you for noticing, Kieran. But next week, we're going to talk about some of the great bookstores that we've had a chance to visit and that we think that people should check out. It's going to be from all over the country, maybe even all over the world.
Absolutely. And not just maybe. Definitely from all
over the world.
Bookstores that are worthy additions to your travel itineraries next week.
Well, until then, Kieran, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kieran Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken. Ryan, all this country music talk made me itching to dust off the old banjo.
Blame it all on my roots. I showed up in boots.
I don't know what that is, but
that's Friends in Low Places.
Let me get it out here.